We talk a lot about the supply side with population reports when it comes to sports cards and collectibles, but what if we're getting the demand wrong? Stick around. Hello.
Oops.
Oh.
Oops.
Hello to all my sports card collector, investor, all of my collectibles friends. What day is it? Is it Wednesday already? It is hump day, guys. How is everybody doing? Hopefully it's been a good week for you so far. We're chugging right through. Today I wanted to tackle kind of an interesting topic because we talk a lot about the supply side, certainly when it comes to sports cards, collectibles. We've seen kind of some price drops within a lot of parts of collectibles. Of course, there's still, higher end items. There's different silos of sports cards, different subsets of collectibles that are still rising in price. But overall, we have seen movement down in price point over the last 6 to 9 months as far as sports cards are concerned. And so I wanted to kind of just share a thought with you and get your thoughts on this. I thought this would be kind of an interesting topic to tackle because we talk a lot about the supply, but are we underestimating future demand for collectibles? And what I mean by that is, there's a lot of talk about this being kind of flash in the pan, Beanie Babies Part 2, junk wax era 2.0. What if we're totally missing the mark though? And I do give credit to some of the critics here to where there are certainly signs, to where there's overproduction that could be possible, especially over the next couple of years. But I'm not talking about really the next 2-3 years. I'm talking more 5 years and beyond, because I do think there's a possibility with, and maybe an economic downturn to where we do see kind of a valley a little bit when it comes to interest in collectibles overall. And that could be totally wrong. Maybe we continue on because let's face it, there is still a lot of interest in all sorts of different types of collectibles. But I'm really thinking long term here. And I was thinking a lot of my office, is made up of, different pieces, whether it be, I've got antique, football helmets. I got a 1930, football helmet, leather football helmet in my office. I've got graded video games. Here's an example. Old Legend of Zelda, one of the classics. I've got sports cards. Larry Bird, National Treasures, On-Card Auto. And then, graded comic books. Here's an example. This is Tales of Suspense, first appearance of the X-Men in a comic book before they had their own title. Kind of cool. But anyway, the reason why I thought of this is these are all pretty interesting talking pieces. There's stories behind these items. And my question is for my generation and younger, and maybe you could also sprinkle in the fact that the younger generations might like NFTs as well. So you're kind of mixing in, some of the newer type collectibles with digital collectibles. But the younger generations are into physical collectibles as well. We've seen that with sports cards and comic books and graded video games and all sorts of different things. But these things, are these going to replace other types of office items, whether it be a fancy pen, or something in your man cave? So between man caves, office, just different talking points between you and your friends, things that become more mainstream for that to happen. I really think that that's going to be the case. And I know that I'm going out on a limb. And again, these are niche, kind of little niche markets. But it's become cool to be the nerd again, and this is something where, and maybe it's just because, prices have gone up, on some of this. And so, it's, whatever, but there's also lots more content being made on whether it be YouTube or Instagram or Twitter or whatever it is, a lot more content going out about collectibles, different types of collectibles. And I think that that's going to keep on. There's also an appetite for alternative investments that's never been there before. And I don't think that it's solely financially based around interest rates being at all-time lows, which of course is having people look at kind of hedges, whether it be a hedge against the dollar or alternative investments instead of just having your cash sitting in a savings account doing nothing for you. Although I do think that certainly plays a part. Stimulus checks, of course, all that stuff. I think that all plays a part, monetary policy. But I think there's something that's bigger than that that's going to keep this going because, again, there is still heavy demand. And we've really seen kind of this market in general, whether we talk about just talking about sports cards, it's really taken a punch in the gut. If you look at, the major grading company, PSA, the number one grading company, has been closed for going on, 6-7 months. I think that's a huge deal. BGS backed up, no retail product anywhere. There's a lot of reasons for people to get out of cards, frankly. There's been a lot of reasons over the last 6 months to do so. And I don't think that once these companies get back to where they should be and kind of get things under control, I don't think that it goes away. I think there's going to be some demand, some staying power in this demand, because like I said, I think this stuff is becoming more and more cool. And I think that the wives are getting on board with it, or the husbands, if the wives are collecting, and the boyfriends, girlfriends, I think they're all getting on board with this stuff. And a lot of these folks too, if we're going down generations, they were raised on video games. Look, like my parents didn't have video games. They were pre-video games. So for them to think that I bought a graded video game, they're probably thinking like, what the heck is your problem? It doesn't make any sense. Why not just stick with traditional investments? Even the Atari folks, even the folks that start off on Atari, it doesn't have the same sort of nostalgia, not quite as Nintendo. Nintendo was a whole different animal. Atari was cool, and it was kind of the first of its kind. There's a lot of really cool Atari stuff. I've got Atari t-shirts. I've got a couple of Atari games up here. I've got Donkey Kong Atari, and I've got Yar's Revenge, graded copies of each of those. They're beautiful boxes, love them. But that's not it's not the same as Nintendo though. Nintendo was a whole new breed of animal, and it came at that kind of that late 80s time when all of this stuff started to come to a head. So I think generationally there's some differences, and they're slight differences, but I think that they're going to matter. I think, and not to say everyone's going to have a graded video game in their house. I don't think that that's necessarily the case, but it doesn't necessarily take everybody to have it. I think there's just going to be a larger demand as the stuff becomes more mainstream, as it becomes more talked about in the news, as it's, in auctions more, as it's, I think it's becoming more and more part of the culture. And again, comic books, very, very similar. Obviously, the Marvel movies and the DC movies are huge blockbuster hits. They still are. Will it always be that way? No. But will people know who Wolverine is 30 years from now? Probably. Those are IPs that are big time IPs that go back decades and decades and decades. Marvel has enough storylines in there, along with DC, that can make movies forever, till the end of time. So, not to say that everyone that goes and watches a Marvel movie wants a comic book, but again, these are just kind of pieces of Americana. It's kind of, if you're an antique person, these will eventually become in that antique world. And for me, I appreciate the history, and I think that others do too. And I think that as people learn more and more about it, they will continue to appreciate these types of items. I could be totally wrong on this. But look, even the President of the United States has a Satchel Paige baseball card on his desk. What do you think? Are we underestimating demand for these types of items? And again, I'm talking about over a long horizon. I'm not talking about, over the next couple of years, because I do think there could be, like I said, I think there's going to be some bumpy road. There is going to be, I think, at some point, consequences for monetary policy, for these types of things, this economy that we're kind of, living in. I think there's going to be some consequences for it. Stuff can't go up forever. Interest rates can't stay low forever. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Are you optimistic as I am? Or, I know there's a lot of people that are not. A lot of people think this is flash in the pan type stuff, and that's perfectly okay too. Let me know either way. Guys, have an amazing rest of your day. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.